Just so you know, this show is about scary stuff. So don't say I didn't warn you guys. And remember, don't be scared.
Episode 130, Because of Love. War Baby here with another episode of Murderous Minors. A few weeks ago, we saw how an unexpected pregnancy played a role in 15-year-old Amanda McGee's plan to murder her father Terrence and stepmother Elisa by the hand of two accomplices. This week on Murderous Minors, we look at the murder of Paul Skinner and the attempted murder of his wife Mara, orchestrated by their 17-year-old adopted daughter, Tia Marie Skinner. It's a case that escalated to parricide just the same as McGee's, but just because of love. No pregnancy required. That love had been a strong one. Strong enough to compel Paul and Mara Skinner to adopt her then 3-year-old biological niece, who had been born while her mother was incarcerated. They already had a biological son and daughter, and had adopted Tia's older half-brother years before. She had lived with her biological father and other relatives in the years leading up to her adoption, and Skinner continued to have a relationship with him until his death when she was 8 years old. The Skinners raised their family in Yale, Michigan, 80 miles or so northeast of Detroit, and their youngest daughter Tia grew into a smart, talented teen. She got all A's and was on the honor roll, played in the band at school and was a marching band drum major, and was active in her church. Just an easy last kid for the middle school teacher and her 47-year-old husband. The teen would get early acceptance to Western Michigan University and received scholarships. So all she needed to do was stay on the right track and graduate, something no one foresaw to be an issue. She had plans to become a pediatrician. The Skinners spent a great deal of time on quality family activities like traveling and skiing, and by the time Tia was a senior in high school, her 3 older siblings were up and out of the house. Paul was often out of town working as a pipe fitter, and Mara and her last child at home spent a lot of time together, and their mother-daughter relationship seemed strong. She made her mother's coffee each morning before they drove to school together, with Tia going to class at Yale High School and Mara going on to the middle school where she taught. Mara would get her in the afternoon when she was done with school and her various activities, and the pair seemed very well set in their schedule and priorities. That is, until Skinner started dating an 18-year-old named Jonathan Kurtz as soon as he joined her church's youth group. He'd been a year ahead of her at Yale High School, and she'd had a crush on him back then, so when he showed up at the Yale Methodist Church one Wednesday night in the fall of 2010, the chemistry between the teens was still there. They became serious very quickly, much to her parents' dismay. They'd only been dating for 2 weeks when Mara caught them together at a park, and on Halloween 2010, Paul and Mara told their 17-year-old that she couldn't see him anymore. Mara had seen texts from Kurtz declaring his love as well, so her phone was confiscated and she was grounded. They basically forbid her from dating Kurtz while encouraging her to enjoy her last months in high school before going on to college. Mara had taught him in middle school and said in later testimony that, quote, "We had talked about friends that were in his peer group, and that was something I didn't want her exposed to at all. This wasn't about me not liking him. This was about me loving her." Skinner tried to convince her parents that Kurtz wasn't like that, but they knew better. By her own later admission, she had apparently planted the seed by sneaking her phone and texting him that she wished her parents were dead, and the unstable Kurtz fell in line. Since she didn't have a phone, much of their planning occurred at church while they were attending their weekly youth group. A neighbor of Kurtz's, 18-year-old James Preston, also got involved. The former high school football star and Eagle Scout attended the same youth group and had brought Kurtz there to help him get his life back on track. Preston was out on his own with a fiancé and a 1-year-old child. Both of the guys had graduated Yale High School in 2010. Preston's senior yearbook mentioned nicknames like James Bond and Big Daddy, and his family had submitted a message to be included which read, quote, "From our baby boy to our star football player to a man and a future college student, you've learned a lot. We've learned a lot. Follow your heart and keep the faith." Preston agreed to help murder the Skinners for the money, with their daughter promising to pay them $500 each out of her scholarship funds. The planning for the murder was concise. She drew a map of her neighborhood and labeled the Skinner home as, quote, "my house," while the flip side depicted a map of the inside, noting which room was the, quote, "parents' bedroom," which had 2 arrows pointing to it. She'd even written out a list of helpful hints and called it quick tips that said, quote, "Dogs bark. Please try not to hurt them. Parents' room is over all doors in the kitchen. Sliding door leads to fenced-in backyard with 2 exits. The quieter, the better. Stairs creak. The later, the better. The doors do make noise when you open them. Try to make it look like a break-in gone bad. If you do it earlier, be prepared for them to be in the TV room. If for some reason I'm not out of the house, I will be in my room with my music or TV on loud. The only door that is locked at night is the side door, but I will make sure it's unlocked." And when that fateful night arrived, Skinner left a stool outside her open bedroom window and a slit cut into the screen. She left 4 knives wrapped in a towel in her first-floor bedroom. Kurtz brought his own hunting knife, however, and the pair covered their faces with bandanas. When Mara and Tia got home on Thursday, November 11th, Paul had come home for the weekend early, prompting the teen to grab her phone and move the attack up to that night. It had been scheduled to happen the next day, which was a Friday. Skinner and her parents went shopping and out for dinner, then came home to find that her brother had come home early, and while her brother and parents watched TV, she was able to grab her confiscated cell phone and text Kurtz that she did not want her brother hurt and that she would get him down to the basement. Their parents went off to bed while Skinner and her brother went to the basement to watch a movie at her request. He testified later that he wanted to watch the movie upstairs where he was already watching TV, but his sister all but insisted they watch it downstairs. He said she also wanted help with homework and went back upstairs 3 times to get supplies, although the first 2 times she didn't come back with anything. On her 3rd trip, he testified she said that something was wrong and went back down to the basement while he went upstairs, following blood toward the front door. Unbeknownst to him, his sister's plan was in action. In the later part of the 30 minutes or so that he was downstairs with her, her boyfriend and his friend had climbed through her first-floor window wearing bandanas over their faces. They used the map and went straight to the master bedroom, intent on killing Paul and Mara Skinner. Mara later testified that she awoke to her husband yelling, quote, "Hun, hun." What she didn't realize yet was that she was being stabbed. As she was fighting for her life, her husband was able to switch the lights on and Mara, quote, "saw a knife ready to come down. I grabbed it. I said, 'No, you have to go.'" Kurtz and Preston ran from the bedroom and Paul gave chase even though he had suffered 23 stab wounds and been gravely injured by a stab to the lung and through the aorta. He was able to make it out the front door after the teens, then back into the house where he encountered his son, telling him that, quote, "they came in and stabbed us." He said that his father, quote, "looked like someone had painted him red." A registered nurse, he knew just by a quick visual assessment that he was going to need some help to manage 2 critical patients. Mara called 911 upstairs, telling them that, quote, "we're bleeding really bad," describing later how she used force against her bed to apply pressure to her wounds. By then, her son had come upstairs to check on the severity of her injuries and told the 911 dispatcher that, quote, "somebody came in and stabbed my mom," while Paul can be heard faintly saying that he can't breathe. Skinner's brother then called his hospital for help and ultimately ran and got a neighbor to assist. Tia Skinner called 911 from the basement roughly 45 seconds after her mother, weepily telling the dispatcher, quote, "I think someone broke into our house. My dad's saying help me." Paul Skinner soon lost consciousness and died before medics could reach him. His daughter told responding officers that, quote, "I stayed in the basement and my brother ran upstairs. I heard something loud and I told him to go get help because I heard screaming. Nobody saw them." He testified that he'd called for his sister to come upstairs and help him, but that she said, quote, "I can't come up there. I can't. She remained in the basement until police arrived and, quote, asked, "Do you know what happened here?" She said no, but my brother said it was bad. When officers searched outside, they found the discarded hand-drawn map with the crime scene listed as my house. The chair that matched the stool was found inside Tia's bedroom, and the list entitled, quote, "Quick Tips" was found inside of Preston's car. They made no attempt to dispose of any evidence like the map or list of tips, and Preston actually left his prescription glasses inside because they'd been knocked off while he was attacking Paul. An officer testified later that Skinner's, quote, "demeanor was indifferent when she was interviewed and that the teen's story changed over its course." Claiming ignorance, she soon fingered Preston and Kurtz as the intruders and said that she was aware they planned to murder her parents and admitted to the trooper that she made the map they found by the fence in her yard. She described going back and forth between the basement and the first floor of the family home, but said that she hadn't seen anything or anyone during that time. She described her relationship with Mara as complicated by the fact that her mother didn't want her dating Jonathan Kurtz, a tenuous situation only made worse by those texts declaring love. She told police that her room smelled like dogs and that's why her window was open. When I finally reach the end of another crazy day, don't be alarmed if I sneak away and grab a few minutes to play Best Fiends, the free-to-download casual mobile puzzle game that does a great job of clearing my mind. It's the kind of game you can play anywhere at any time with no pressure and no Wi-Fi needed. When I'm in the zone, it's hard to put down because the fun just keeps on coming. And adults always think that fun is only for kids, but logging some daily fun time on Best Fiends has become my go-to activity for winding down. I play while my polish is drying or while I'm waiting for a commercial break to end. Anytime I can squeeze a level in, I do. I'm on level 915 now and can't wait to break 1000. With thousands of levels to play and new events and challenges always popping up, now is a great time to get in on the fun. Download your new favorite getaway, Best Fiends, for free today on the App Store or Google Play. You'll even get $5 worth of in-game rewards when you reach level 5. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends. When James Preston was questioned, he said that the plan kicked into high gear following that Halloween meeting between Skinner and her parents. Originally, she'd given them the map at their last youth group meeting and instructed them to wait at the vacant house behind the Skinners on South Main Street until 11 p.m. on November 12th. Their signal to enter the home was seeing the light turn on in the basement. Preston told police that he began having second thoughts, but that Kurtz threatened his life and the life of his daughter should he back out. He claimed to have waited outside the master bedroom, only going in when he heard a struggle, and said that he may have stabbed Skinner because the man had grabbed him and put him in a headlock. Kurtz told police that he had been the one to stab Mara, but that he hadn't stabbed Paul. He said that, quote, "I was debating first whether or not to do it, but I'm like, money's hard to get. I needed the money." He told police, "I asked her time and time again, 'Are you sure?' She said, 'Yes, I am 120% sure.' She said yes because she hated her mom. I didn't want to kill them." On November 14th, 2010, 2 days after the stabbings, Tia Skinner, Jonathan Kurtz, and their friend James Preston were arrested and charged with open murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder. It had been 15 years since the last homicide in Yale, Michigan. Following an extensive preliminary hearing on November 24, 2010, the trio were bound over for trial, with Skinner being charged as an adult. The first to go to trial was a then 19-year-old Jonathan Kurtz, beginning on June 14, 2011. James Preston's trial was to begin on July 6th and Tia Skinner's on August 9th. After putting forth absolutely no defense, Jonathan Kurtz was found guilty of first-degree murder, assault with intent to murder, and conspiracy to commit murder on June 22, 2011. James Preston went to trial next on July 6, 2011. The first witness called by the prosecution was the medical examiner. He called the fact that Mara survived nothing short of miraculous, testifying that, quote, "I can't offer anything scientific. The best explanation is luck was involved." The prosecution rested after calling a total of 2 witnesses to the stand. In the defense's opening statement, Preston's attorney told the jury that she would be calling character witnesses in support of her client and that he would be taking the stand in his own defense. When the time came, however, that didn't happen, and the defense rested its case without calling any witnesses. James Preston was found guilty on July 15, 2011 on the same charges as Kurtz: first-degree murder, assault with intent to murder, and conspiracy to commit murder. When Tia Skinner went to trial on August 9, 2011, her mother Mara took the stand, followed by her brother, in what was basically a repeat of her co-conspirators' trials. And the outcome was identical, with Tia Marie Mitchell Skinner being found guilty of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder without ever wielding a knife herself. She, Kurtz, and Preston were sentenced together on September 16, 2011, and all 3 received life without parole, the mandatory sentence for a first-degree murder conviction. Speaking at the hearing, Mara Skinner told her daughter that, quote, "I thought I knew you, but I guess I really didn't know you at all," which is heartbreaking. She went on to say, quote, "We were awakened by you, Jonathan and James, wearing masks and bearing knives. You savagely and barbarically stabbed us. Our screams and our cries for help went unanswered. You heard them and you chose not to stop, not to have any mercy on us. I, along with my family and friends, will forever bear a heart-crushing loss. Each one of you, John, James, and Tia, had the opportunity to stop this horrific attack at many different times and chose not to, and I will never understand why." Tia spoke, saying, quote, "I never wanted my parents dead. I said something to a guy. He took what I said literally. He carried out the act. I'm not looking for or asking for forgiveness, but I'm simply letting everyone know how truly sorry I am." She described her parents as being wonderful and said that, quote, "No one would have ever thought their youngest daughter could possibly be involved in something so horrific. A daughter that she raised so well, a daughter that she took in when her sister couldn't care for her child, a daughter that loved her family so much that words could never explain." When Jonathan Kurtz spoke, he ended his statement with, quote, "On behalf of everybody that you put to life, fuck you." James Preston used his speaking time to ask for an acquittal, and that though he stabbed both Paul and Mara, he hadn't killed anyone. The request was denied, and the judge told the trio that, quote, "In this situation, you are all equally responsible for the end result." When Skinner was 19, she was interviewed by a local newspaper and said, quote, "I just wonder how everything could have been flipped upside down so quick. And I never would have thought I'd be the one to orchestrate something to hurt my family because my family is people I'd protect. I regret everything. I regret all my decisions. I just had a bad temper, and I took it out on somebody who looked after me and took care of me." She said that hearing her dad scream out for help after he was stabbed, quote, "sounded awful to me. It literally made my heart break in two to hear my dad like that." In regards to her sentence, she said, quote, "I believe that everybody deserves a second chance in life," and said that she felt like 20 years in prison was a sufficient sentence for the part she played in the stabbings. That interview took place just weeks after the June 2012 Miller v. Alabama decision that outlawed mandatory life without parole sentences for juvenile offenders. When the trio was sentenced in 2011, the judge told the Skinner family that, quote, "words cannot express how emotionally and physically draining it has been just to watch you as you're forced to relive the horror of that night. It's a sad day, but it's come to an end now." However, that wasn't the case. In fact, Tia Skinner would be sentenced and resentenced to life without parole 4 times in all starting in 2011, dragging her family back through the horrific events each and every time. The original LWOP sentence was officially overturned by the Michigan Court of Appeals in February 2013. She got a new hearing that took place in July 2013, where she addressed the court saying, "I am the coward that everyone says I am." She could have been given a sentence that included an opportunity for release. However, the judge once again gave her life without parole, saying in his decision that, quote, "she was not affected by peer pressure. She was not a follower. Tia Marie Skinner, I sentence you to a term of natural life in prison without the opportunity for parole, not because it's mandated by law, but because justice demands that you serve not 1 day less." After new Michigan legislation mandated another resentencing, Skinner received life without parole for the 3rd time on September 24, 2014. Her defense team consisted of lawyers from the Child Advocacy and Juvenile Justice Clinic at the University of Michigan Law School, and Mara described a 3-day-long battle against the accusations she says they hurled at her and her family about Skinner's allegedly troubled upbringing. Mara said at that hearing that, quote, "It's been a fight for me. Initially, it was a fight for my life, and I still continue to fight for my life. Whenever I have to go back to the courtroom, it brings us right back to the core of what happened. It never goes away for us. It never will." Then, in August 2015, the Michigan Court of Appeals ruled that a 4th sentencing was in order and said that the state needed to prove to a jury that Skinner's actions showed irreparable corruption. Chief Circuit Judge Daniel Kelly sentenced her to life all 3 of the previous times. The state Supreme Court overturned the appeals court decision in 2017, saying that trial judges hold the authority to sentence juvenile offenders to life without parole, causing the appeals court to reconsider Skinner's previous sentence. On November 16, 2018, her life without parole sentence was reinstated. In regards to the re-traumatization of victims during the juvenile offenders resentencing process, Mara said in 2015 that, quote, "the victim sentences will never be lessened." At the same time, however, she felt that, quote, "I think we should always strive as a society to improve what we do. We should always take steps ahead. Victims never get over these life-changing events, however we strive to carry on. And so while we begin and work through this process with the help and support of our faith, family, and friends, rulings that open wounds really re-victimize victims in so many ways. It has to be equitable. It certainly shouldn't involve opening wounds for victims. It can be 30 years and it's going to bring somebody back to the crux of what happened. The magnitude of it will never go away. I'm glad that people don't look at me with such hurt. I'm glad they don't anymore. However, I'm still living with that. That is my world. It's our life now because that changed all of us." Tia Skinner will be 30 years old in December 2022 and is currently incarcerated at the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Her mother, now Mara McCalman, started a nonprofit organization called P.S. You're My Hero, with the P.S. standing for her husband's initials. From 2014 to 2019, annual 5K runs helped to raise funds for projects like increasing access to counseling, comfort rooms at the St. Clair County Prosecutor's Office, and a therapy dog. Mara described their purpose best, saying that, quote, "The focus was always the defendants and the crime. I wanted to bring light to the victims. What we're doing is what we can do to help the next family or to make this a little easier journey for the next victim." The night of the attack, his first response was to take care of me. He was being attacked and he didn't fight for his life. He got me up and probably that's why he didn't make it. He wanted to make sure I had a chance. If he wouldn't have done that, I know I wouldn't have been here. He is my hero.